Hey everyone, I'm really glad I have the chance to meet you here in this way and talk about the clinical supervision's evolving status in China. And my topic is from luxury to necessity. Later you will know that it is from clinical supervision, it's a path from luxury to everyone that no one able to get or hardly someone who could get clinical supervision to now it is a necessity that everyone ask for and want to have and able to have access to clinical supervision. Okay, so some basic information. If I want to tell something about China, you need to know the basic data. So the most basic data is the population. So here is the way you see it. It's not so common, but this is kind of a common subway, which is a popular subway, of course, but it's a common subway, what that look like in Wuhan. You know, this is where I am, and this is a city you may all know. And this is Beijing, also a subway station, and this is, you see people trying to shove the working people, trying to shove people inside the train. That means we really have a lot of people here. Okay, so some basic data. We have 1.4 billion people, and according to a research that published on Lancet on 2017, 9.3% people may have some kind of disorder within a year. That means we have 134 million people that need to be served from clinical and counseling psychology or psychiatry or anything included. Okay, now you know the basic data, then we could start to talk about it, where it all started. From 1980s to 1990s, that's the first time that in China you could get some training for counselor by continuous education. Therefore, at the very beginning, the training in China in clinical and counseling psychology are based on the continuous education. It lasts until now. Up to now, most of our practitioners are trained by continuous education, and academic education is not sufficient according to its way, the way it's structured, and it's not sufficient for most of the practitioners, especially for those. We are lacking of training site, and we are lacking of clinical supervision. That I will talk to you later. And then on 2002, the government somehow realized that we really need a lot of people that able to deliver the mental health service. And therefore, they started the nationwide non-certification exam. And that exam hold a really low bar, which you could be trained for 3 months, and later you could get that certification. And later, on 2017, the government realized that the bar is really low, so that it's not sufficient for screening any mental health professionals. Therefore, they give it up. And later we hold no certification exam. The reason I call it non-certification exam is because if you would want to practice, you don't really necessarily hold that certification. You could just come to the market management branch and then file some things that I'd like to practice in counseling, and they will check nothing and let you do it. Okay, this is from 2002. And from 2007, where the most important group is coming in, which is CCPRS, that is Clinical and Counseling Psychology Registration System. They are a group of professors in college or universities, and they have been taught in the academic training of professional, not in the mainland China, but overseas or in Hong Kong, Taiwan, or someplace else. They get together and they realize that we need a professional group that could able to do some quality control of the counselors. Therefore, they built a series of documents. One of those is quite famous in China now. It's our ethics code. So our ethics code is published by the CPS, which is Chinese Psychological Society, and CCPRS was a branch or division of CPS. And those group of professionals, later they make the registration system really popular all over the country. And up to now, they have more than 6,000 members have registered as a registered clinician or registered supervisor. So they hold several kind of registration. Like if you want to be a registered clinician, then you have to learn certain curriculum, and including like abnormal psychology, counseling psychology, something like that. And then they require you practice under supervision for a period of time, like 200 hours of practice under supervision, and at least 30 hours of supervision, individual supervision, and some hours of group supervision. That's what their criteria for. And if you want to be a member, you have to reach that criteria, and they will ask the people to review that. And from the 2015 registration system, realized that even though we ask for supervision hours, but there are so many supervisors have not been trained as a supervisor, because supervisor is a different set of skill that than the counseling psychology. So that's the reason they first introduced one very first systematic supervision training, and that was hosted in Wuhan. So a typical practitioner in China for now is like it's look like this. So basically, their main training is a non-academic training. Even though they graduate from an academic program, they may not have any experience of practicum or supervision. So basically, the main part of their training is a non-academic one, which is continuous education after they get their master degree or even doctor degree. And we do not have a lot of training programs regarding clinical and counseling psychology. Basically, most of the we have only 68 psychological programs, and only half of those have clinical and counseling psychology program. And we have a 99 so-called practical training program, and also maybe by estimate only 50 of those. So all in total is 80 programs all over China. And up to now, most of clinicians or most of practitioners wants to join CCPRS, just some do not reach the standard. And some of them just don't know it. They don't know there is a CCPRS. Usually, if they don't know CCPRS, then they do not know there is an ethical code. Because they are the 1.3 million people that trained to pass the exam, the national-wide exam. And the third one is they are method or theory based. So they claim that I'm psychodynamic, I'm human-centered, I'm CBT, and they will just commitment to that specific method, and they train all their training according to that method. But more and more people now claiming that they are integrated or eccentric or eclectic. So that means, I think later on, integration would be the mainstream, but not now. Okay. And those are the peoples who really bring professional supervisor training to mainland China. You see on the right-hand side there are 4 people, which is Guang Jiang. He is my teacher advisor, and back to then he is the one thought as the vice president of CCPRS, and he think that okay, now maybe the time we need a supervision training. And under him, this is Ming Yiqian. Back to then she is the president of CCPRS, and she said, okay, I totally agree. that, and we should think how to introduce that. And back to them, Xiaoming Jia. Now she is the president of CCPRS, and Fu Minfan. She is one of the most famous psychologists in the field of group counseling and group supervision. And those are the main task force of the CCPRS, and they all agree that this is the time we need to bring in the supervision training. So because there's no people in mainland China, they are the top scholars, and they do not know how to train systematically in supervision. So they reached out to Changming Duan, who is Chinese American, and she is working in Kansas University, and she said, okay, I could help. And then she reached out to Professor Rod Goodyear and Professor Carol Fallender, and those Dr. Goodyear and Dr. Fallender was the main lecturer for this program, and this is where it all started, and this is the very first professional supervision training, systematically and cross theoretically. It's not theory based, so it's quite different. And this is up to now. We have made a small investigation on why up to now, because we have do this training for 7 years already, and we have more than 600 students. And this is research that investigated all the supervisor in registration system and asked about what kind of competence they use the most. You see, before Karen and Rod comes in, there's no one knows contracting. Now there are most people using contracting, and IPR is another featured thing. Is usually there's no one knows what IPR is. Now they know it. And use of videos, you see a lot of people start to use it, and period evaluation, use of routine outcome measuring. Those are the things that bring in by Rod and Carol, and those are the things that from 7 years ago there is a very first people start to use it, and then now there are so many people already use it. Okay, so what the supervision is like in China is relatively different than other place. One is self-pay is a major way to supervision session. It's not unlike other country that usually paid by the program of the students. In China, if you want to have a supervisory session, you have to find your own supervisor and pay directly to the supervisor. That is the most common way. And then the second one is academic training do not usually include supervision. Sometimes do not include practicum. There are only like 3 to 5 universities program have practicum and supervision, so it's not so common. But gradually, because registration system have started their evaluation on the programs, so they kind of encourage the program to add up the practicum related training. And the third thing is quite special in China, because one time supervision in group and big group is quite still popular. It's not so good way of training, but because of limited resources, so this is quite common. But by big group, I mean not like 10, 20, or 40, or even 100. I mean sometimes 1,000, sometimes 10,000 people all get together. So registration system consider that is not acceptable. So they claim that if you want to say that is group supervision, you'd better let the people less than 40. So more than that, clinical registration system do not admit that. Therefore, you cannot use like 1,000 people all get together and have a supervision online. This doesn't count for registration system, but it still happened. And the CCPRS influences keep growing rapidly. So from the very first year, 2007, they have 108 members, and to 2017, they have like 1,000 or 1,000, more than 1,000, and up to now, they have more than 6,000. You can see the way that they're growing. And because more and more people know it, and more people want to join it. Okay. Basically, that's what I want to say. But if you'd like to know more about it, you could communicate via the email. The email address is here. You could add it to it. Thank you very much.